Sam Clarke, welcome to my podcast.
Cheers. Thank you. No,
You're a little nervous. This is your first podcast experience.
Yeah. Oh, I'd be lying if I'm not. Like I was saying to you before, sort of not my personality to talk about myself, especially in deep or in sort of more lengthy conversations. I'm more the kind of guy that would just sit around and like to listen when people talk. But yeah, definitely taking something out of my comfort zone, new experience. So yeah.
Yeah, because you messaged me on Instagram maybe a couple of months ago, and we were just going backwards and forwards, and you had some kind words about some previous episodes I've done that sort of helped you, and then I suggested that you'd be a good podcast guest. You said fuck off, pretty much.
I think it was a little bit politer than
and then after chatting about it with your wife, you came back and said, yeah, maybe give it a go.
Yeah, it was after I listened to your episode with Janet Redman. And I think that that afternoon I'd sort of come back from a psychologist appointment and was not in a good headspace, just feeling a bit shit. And then listening to your episode where you sort of opened up and was openly vulnerable, sort of just gave me a bit of perspective of what I was going through. It's normal and it's okay. So just thought that I'd flick your message just to say that was appreciated, but yeah, I did decline.
No, it was the message was really kind, and it's great to have you here today. And what you have been through is anything but normal. And we can get into this in as much or as little detail as what you're comfortable with. But 20th of July, 2023. Take us back to that day, that morning.
So I was working on this. It was about 7:20 in the morning, and I was working on this work group called OPT, which was part of this tactical response model in the police. And I remember that we were in the office, and we were out in Manukau. So traffic was shocking that time of the morning, and we heard on the radio that a job had come in for a male on Queen Street seen with a shotgun, and that was all the initial information. So we started to kit up, ready to deploy to it. Then we got updates that he had gone into a construction site and shots had been fired, and I think someone had been hit at that point. Sorry. And so we deployed. We were a team of 4. Came into fought rush hour traffic basically the whole way into the city. And I remember hearing on the radio that there were more shots going off in the construction site, and that there had been more people injured. And at some stage, I think police had already been shot at from the offender. So we got in there, and I remember thinking the whole way in that, we're fighting rush hour traffic to get in there. We're not going to get there in time. These police are already frontline guys and girls are already there. They're going to deal with it, before we sort of get there for not the good parts, but to actually see some bit of action. But it kept unfolding, and we started to get a little bit closer and started realising, we might actually be on here and have to really get stuck into work. So we pulled up, got all our kit out. I was driving, and I remember when we pulled up, or just before we pulled up, the rest of the boys started chucking on their helmets, their ballistic helmets. And obviously I was driving, so I couldn't put mine on. And when we pulled up, one of the boys just chucked me a random helmet, because mine was in the squad room at the time, so it was someone else's helmet. And I remember getting out of the car and looking at my helmet, and you could hear at this point gunshots going off in the construction site. Which was down on one Queen Street, I think it was. Yes, you could hear gunshots going off, and I remember looking at my helmet and having kind of like that feeling inside of, fuck, I actually probably don't have time to actually put this on. You know, there's a guy in the construction site that's actively killing people or attempting to kill people and injure them, and just thought, nah, fuck it, I'll take the, sorry, I swear a bit.
That's all right. It's a podcast.
So I remember looking at my helmet and thinking, nah, I'll just take 20 seconds. I'll just take 20 seconds to put it on. And which ended up being fine, because by that point the rest of the boys had gone to the back of the car and starting to pull out some like first aid kits, and I think one of the guys originally tried to pull out the shield and thought, nah, bugger this. The offender was up on like level 18, so I'm not carrying this all the way up, so chucked it back. Went into the construction site. I think when we got there, he was on level, it was either around level 18 or 15, around there, so we started going up basically with our stair drills, and I remember, you know, there was blood, like from arterial bleeds. When they bleed, they squirt out, so there was blood on the side of the concrete slabs in the staircase. There were empty shotgun casings on the staircase. There were victims that were running down that had like gunshot wounds to their hands and arms. We just had to bypass them. You know, you sort of, our priority is to stop the offending, and then we look to provide medical assistance where we can.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we ended up getting all the way up to level 20, where some of the other guys that were on squad, on the AOS, had already chased him up there, and he had gone into like two elevator shafts that were under construction. So the decision was made that, okay, we would drop down 2 levels to try and isolate him in those shafts, so that essentially he couldn't get back down past us, back out onto another floor and keep shooting and looking for more victims, essentially.
Fuck, it's a lot going on very quickly.
It sort of took, like, I remember we left Manukau at 7, from memory it was about 7:30 in the morning, and you're fighting rush hour traffic, so really you're probably not getting in there till about maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, so he had a lot of time to
do some damage.
Yeah, to really.
No, but I mean, once you and the rest of your AOS Armed Defender Squad mates are in there, it's like split-second decisions, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And I got to take my hat off to, you know, our forward commander who ran the job. You know, he's the one we're just executing his decisions, essentially, and
following orders.
Yeah, and he's having to make them within, like you say, a split second. That no, we are going to go down 2 floors to try and isolate him. So a few of us went back down from level 20 down to 18, and there were 4 plywood doors that were padlocked shut, so where the elevator doors will eventually go, they were just a hinged piece of plywood, essentially, temporary door, and there were 4 of them lined up. So we started to work on the first one just to start breaching them open so that we could properly contain him, the offender. So I helped out on the first door that was there. We breached that, and it was just an open, essentially an open elevator shaft, so there was nothing inside, it just dropped straight down. And at this point I could see, for some reason, we missed 2 doors and went to the last door in the row. And I could see 2 of the boys already working on that door, so usually with our drills you want three people there ideally. So I pushed over to where they were, and we started to get to work on that door. So the door, we breached the door, and essentially as the doors opened, all we've been looking at is like a pitch black space, and basically as soon as that door has opened, 2 gunshots have gone off from the offender. And I just remember feeling a massive thump to the side of my head, and my comms set falling off. So it was dangling down my back. So obviously that kind of knocked me backwards and on my ass a little bit. One of the dog handlers came around and grabbed me around the corner, and took off my helmet, checked everything over, checked that my head was all good, there was no obvious blood or anything. Put the helmet back on and came back around the corner to keep doing the job with the boys.
Oh, so you're back to work?
Yeah. But at that point there was a few other, obviously once we'd been shot, a few of the boys had pushed past us and had put themselves in a position where they were doing the work basically at that point, but came back around to join the stack with them, to be useful where possible. And yeah.
You what does it feel like when you get shot in a ballistics helmet with a bullet?
I wouldn't recommend it.
You've
worked.
You've done you do Ironman events and you've done triathlons. You must have fallen off a bike before. Is it similar to falling off a bike with a helmet on, or does it feel like someone's punched you in the head?
It feels like someone's like you've just clocked one to the side of the head, basically.
Right, so you're sort of like a bit bewildered.
Yeah, enough to like make you sort of stumble backwards a little bit. And the helmet definitely did its job. It's not something I'd recommend. I think all I had in the end was a bit of a mild concussion, which is what I walked away with, thankfully.
Because I looked this up yesterday just to remind myself of what happened that day. So the shooter was a 24-year-old who was on electronically monitored bail with permission to go to work. So he went to work in Commercial Bay with a gun, as we know, killed 2 of his colleagues. Wounded 7 other people, including a police officer, and then killed himself. So the police officer that was injured, that's not you?
So 2 of us got shot.
Right.
Yeah, so one of us... And I sort of don't want to talk about... he's a good mate, and sort of his recount of the events is sort of his story to tell. But yeah, so he received more physical injuries. But we were both at that door at the same time, and he got 1 shot and I got the other one, essentially. Right.
Yeah. So when we read that report, like one police officer injured, like it doesn't count the bloke that got a shot in the head with
shot to the head, but it was
mild concussion.
It was just a concussion. Yeah. Doesn't count to the stats.
So then when do you find out that the gunman has killed himself?
So obviously I was there once it all kind of eventuated and resolved itself. But yeah, you just heard him essentially just shoot himself, basically, and then there was a bit of a delay, just voice appealing him. The guys did a good job with, after both of us had been shot, there was a bit of a delay, so they started voice appealing him out to try and not just rush in and take action. They still had the thought of, okay, let's try an alternative means.
So arrest him.
But
that must be a crazy, chaotic environment, like just shouting, yelling.
Oh, 100%. Like you could hear when we were going up the staircase. Originally, up the staircase, there was 15 flights, also 20 flights to go up. But yeah, you can hear people screaming for help and victims in the stairwell that had gunshot wounds, and you can't help them, because you've still got someone that's actively offending, and that's our priority, unfortunately, is to bypass the injured and deal with the offender, neutralise him, whether that's take him into custody or whatever, before we can actually look at providing first aid.
So after it reaches its conclusion, what happens then?
So
do you guys sit down and have a coffee, or?
Yeah, it would have been nice. So I had a throbbing headache and felt like dizzy for about a couple of hours. But essentially, myself and a couple of the others that were involved in the critical ending aspect of it, we kind of got put to the side and kind of not really to talk to sort of any of the other guys that were coming and going just from like investigation purposes. So we kind of got put to the side, and essentially what happens is a team gets formed up and they clear the whole entire construction site. So that took 4 hours that we were stuck up on level 18, and they had to clear 18 floors down to make sure that there's definitely no more offenders, there's no one hiding that's injured, or so I essentially had to wait the 4 hours till I could get out and to the ambulance, and I just remember being busting for a piss the whole time. But I was like, there's nowhere to go.
Couldn't you go in your helmet?
Oh, I know, yeah. Yeah, well, that was already a write-off, so I may as well have.
Did you have your phone on you? Are you able to get hold of your wife?
My wife was ringing me.
Yeah.
And how I handled, I mean, she tells it a lot better than I do, but how I handled that whole situation afterwards, in her words, could have been a lot better. So she rang me once, and I was looking at her, and this was when we were kind of sitting to the side, and I had like this throbbing headache, and sort of coming round to actually how
processing what happened,
close I was,
yeah.
And so she's ringing me, and it popped up, and I remember looking at it and thinking, fuck, I can't answer this, and I felt like at that point I wanted to cry. Just sort of seeing her pop up, and I was like thinking, fuck, how am I going to explain this one, so I didn't answer that call, and then she rang again, and I didn't answer that one.
Meanwhile, she's panicking more and more with every missed call.
Yeah, and she says it a lot better, but she had no idea what was going on. She had dropped our daughter off at daycare, and her phone was blowing up saying, I hope Sam's all good, and had a whole bunch of messages, and she's like, I don't even know what's happening. So then naturally she starts panicking, and it wasn't once she started looking online and she had saw what had unfolded, she then tried reaching out. But I ended up just texting her, and this is the bit that I could have handled better. I just said, I'm all good. I got hit in the helmet, but I'm fine. And that was all I left. That was all I left of that.
Very economical with your words.
Yeah. And she said, well, what do you mean? Like, hit with what? A bullet? Or capitals? And I was like, yeah, but I'm fine. But yeah, we've talked about that and if it was to happen again, how to handle it a little bit better. But
it's a surreal situation, isn't it?
Well,
you're in shock. She's panicked.
Yeah. Like, I don't know how else do you explain it. Like, I did get hit, but I'm fine. Without going into, you can't sit there and text out everything that's happened.
No, blow by blow. There's time for that later on, I guess. But you can understand it from her perspective, but also I can understand it from your perspective.
100%. Yeah, I'd be freaking out too if I was in her shoes.
So when you get reunited with her later that day, what happened? You burst into tears. What are you?
So I ended up having to go through to hospital.
Right.
So once we came out of the site, 4 or so hours later, I went through to hospital, and they just did some like CT scans on my head just to make sure that there wasn't any permanent damage, and just to confirm basically it was just a concussion. So she ended up coming into hospital to meet me there. I actually can't really remember what I kind of felt at the time. I think I was probably still had that massive adrenaline dump, and I remember her like walking into the hospital and being like, sort of feeling grateful and thankful that she was there, but it wasn't overly emotional. I think it was just because I still had that massive adrenaline dump from the whole job.
Cortisol levels must have been through the fucking roof.
Oh yeah. I remember not sleeping that night, and just because you're playing it over and over and over again.
Yeah. So Armed Defender Squad. So you have the bulletproof helmet on, which saved your life. What else do you have on? Yeah, do you have like a bulletproof chest vest or?
So on the team that we were working, we were just in normal blues, like the normal police that you see. So we essentially, the TRM model was created after Constable Matt Hunt was murdered, as a way to essentially try and provide more support to the front line. So we were a work group that had 4 AOS members on it, but we were dressed in our blues to essentially, you'd lie deer behind us so that you could think you're looking at a normal frontline PST cop, but you've actually got 4 AOS qualified guys there. So that day we were just working in our normal blue uniform, but yeah, we had our BAS on, and we just used to carry our helmets in the car in case we went to a job that escalated. At least we had some resources to do what we needed to while we waited for the rest of the squad to come out. Yeah.
So presumably it was like a wild shot rather than a targeted shot. So it could have easily got you in the chest, in the arm.
Yeah, essentially. So I think thankfully we ended up being about 1.5 meters, 2 meters away from him, behind the door, and I still have never seen him. Like, it's still like, last thing I remember was just looking at a black space essentially. So it was a blessing in disguise that both of us were really close, so the helmet took the full impact. So essentially the pellets are kind of still in like a wadding that comes out, so they're in a shotgun shell. They're a bunch of pellets basically, and because we were so close they didn't have time to spread. Whereas I think if we were maybe a couple meters, 2-3 meters back, that spread probably would have been a bit wider and probably would have come down into the neck area. I think thankfully, I don't know, maybe because I'm not the tallest bloke, I think if I was a bit taller, that, what was up here could have maybe been down a little bit lower.
What other helmets? Is there like a face guard, or
no?
Is it
It's no face guard. Just literally just a ballistic helmet that's just got. They look like your earmuffs on the side, but they're a comm set, so you can still. It's sound reducing to loud decile. So if a gunshot went off, it would block that out, but you could still talk as normal to each other. But yeah, no face shield, and I wasn't wearing glasses at the time either, just because I didn't have any. It was.
Shit, there was lucky. A lot that went lucky that day, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, and I just think back to, if I just remember steering when we arrived, looking at my helmet and hearing gunshots. You could hear people screaming inside for help, and you're like, fuck, I probably don't have time to put this on, but having, I'm just going to take 20 seconds or 30 seconds, whatever it was, to put the helmet on, make sure I'm ready to go so that when we go in, I'm as prepared as possible. And yeah, thank God I did.
Yeah. So when what happens after that? Do you go back to work, or did you just never return to work and you're done?
Nah, so the police actually have a really good reintegration program.
Yeah.
So immediately after, I think they sort of gives you like, you can have 5 days off, but at that point, you're going to a psychologist straight away. You got medical appointments just to get the doctor's sign off. Got meetings with the lawyers, because obviously there's a criminal investigation aspect of it as well, to figure out what actually happened. So the association kind of set us up with, so you get in to talk to a lawyer just to make sure what the statement that you're going to give is all covered off and appropriate, essentially. So that was about 5 days, and I think after that 5 days I went back and asked for more days off, because I kind of didn't really have a break afterwards. We had all these appointments, had to go see the psychologist, doctors, lawyers appointments. Everyone's checking in on you. The commissioner of the police was ringing to check in. The guys on just that you work with always checking in. So I didn't really feel like I had that break.
It's not really a break.
It's not really a break. So I said to my psychologist, can you just say I need another, I think it was about like 6 more days off. And at that 6 days, I just didn't pick up my phone or anything, and actually had 6 days off.
Seems like the duty of care, from what you're describing, the duty of care on behalf of the police was really good.
It is really good, yeah. And they don't pressure you to go back either. So they sorry, Kanye's distracted me.
He's very restless.
Yeah. So yeah, their reintegration program is really good. So they sort of, you catch up for a coffee with the reintegration team, and they say, like, essentially, what do you feel like you want to do to ease you back into work? So for me, I said I wanted to do some like just listening to gunshots again. What else did we do? We did some went back, did some shooting, and then just did some shooting in the dark. So sort of just getting in the habit of chucking on the light, doing some shooting there. But they literally ease you into it. Like, we started off with...
by the way, I'm just going to pause you there. I don't think you realise how unusual that sentence or paragraph is.
Yeah,
like easing back into work by listening to gunshot noises and shooting in the dark. Like, it's fucked up.
Yeah, it is. It is fucked up, but that's the environment that you're working in, you know.
And how hard was it to do that stuff?
At the time, it was fine.
Mm.
At the time, it was fine. Like, we went to the range and we literally stood outside, and so we stood outside the range and you just listen to someone shooting inside, and then you get closer to the door and you listen to it, and then they open the door to the range and you listen to the gunshots, and they'll just shoot, and you just kind of make your way closer and closer till you're standing next to the operator that's shooting, just to expose you to it again. And then you take your ear muffs off if you want to. So they really ease you back into it, and they're very open to, like, whatever you feel like you need to do, they'll make it happen, you know.
Well, it's such an important job, but also such an unusual job as well.
Yeah.
Like, it really is. So when you do go back to work?
Yeah, so I went back. This was July, and I ended up leaving in October. End of October, I ended up leaving the police. So I went back. Was that July, August? In about 3 months.
Was it your decision to leave, or like a co-joined decision with your wife?
So, looking at it now, and this is sort of like even though me and her have had really good conversations about it and talked about it, and I apologised to her with the way I kind of dealt with it afterwards, but like, once I kind of did my reintegration and figured, okay, there's no triggers that I'm reacting to or feeling stressed about, it was kind of back to business as usual, you know. It was one of the, still at the time, it was the best job I've ever been to, you know. People will be in the police and on AOS for their whole lives or their whole career and never get to be exposed to an incident like that. So even though it's a horrible thing, it's still a highlight.
Exciting.
Highlight of my career. You know, that's what we train for.
Wow.
You know, all of our training is worst case scenario, and that is worst case scenario. So to actually get to be deployed and be at the pointy end of it is still a highlight of my career.
Is that why you're when you arrived so blasé about the helmet, because things like this just thankfully don't happen all that often?
Potentially. And it was just kind of had the equipment there, so you just use it, right? So I ended up leaving in October. I wasn't planning on leaving. I was still enjoying work and happy. Had some good jobs after that we went to, and the confidence was there, and there wasn't any issues. But my wife was still kind of struggling with it a little bit. Like, she was getting, like, I'd get called out in the middle of the night, and then she's not sleeping now because she's stressed. Well, last time he got a call out, he nearly died essentially. So naturally, she's anxious, and her anxiety's no good. So she was kind of struggling with it a little bit, and an opportunity out of the blue popped up to sort of go do some different work. It was just kind of, I looked at it as kind of meant to be, and kind of, I wasn't looking for it, and it sort of came looking for me. So just talked to Jess about it, and at the time it was the best decision for both of us, I think, to to go do something else.
Yeah, because you got two daughters as well. What are the ages of your daughters?
So at the time, Florence it was 10 days before her 3rd birthday, and then my wife was pregnant at the time, so that didn't help either. Yeah,
I'm amazed you went back to work at all.
Oh, it's hard because it's like I sort of said, it's what we train for, like that's to be involved in a job like that was a lot of our training was training for a situation like that, and it did feel at the time it felt like a scenario. Like our scenarios in training, we will have role players, and depending on some of the exercises, they will get they will be running around and screaming at you, and it just felt like a scenario that we had stacked up at the car, and they said, cool, scenario begins, and you do your run through, and that's what it felt like on the day. So it just showed that the training that we had been doing had prepared us appropriately for it. I think we were just set up, we just had the disadvantage essentially. So where the offender ended up being, we were standing in an open construction floor that had the skyline as a background, and he's in a dark room. So the minute that door opens, he's seeing all these silhouettes against the blue sky backdrop, and we're staring into a black room. So I don't think it would have mattered who was at the door or if we had have done anything different. He just had the advantage over us basically, and what we do isn't I don't want to say bulletproof because it wasn't bulletproof, but but it's not like we take away some of the risk, but you don't take away all of it.
Yeah, well, there's always going to be some unknowns there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So how long had you been in the police, and then what's the training that's involved in becoming a member of the Armed Defender Squad?
So I joined in 2019. I think I graduated September, and I did my AOS selection course. I think it was February 2022. So it was about a year and maybe 3-4 months into the job, but that was all I kind of wanted to do once I found out about the AOS and Armed Defender Squad. My whole intention of joining the police was to go down that route. So once I'd kind of ticked all the boxes I needed to on being frontline, PST, the first selection that came round, I just chucked in my application and thought, bugger it, give it a crack.
And what sort of bugger it, give it a crack?
Yeah.
what sort of training's involved with that?
So each district will do each district has their own squad. So Auckland will run essentially a 1-day selection process, and it's just so without giving it all away, that's there's like some exams, scenarios, and physical aspects of it, like pack work and resilience exercises. So you do the 1-day selection course, and the Auckland squad then will, like, let's say if there's 25 people that apply for it and do the course, they might take 3 or 4 that they think, these are the ones that would want on our squad. So then you get sent down to Wellington. All the districts send down their applicants, and you do a 4-day selection course. And that one's a bit more in depth, and just a lot of, you're not getting much sleep, and they just really work you down mentally and physically, and you're not getting too much food, and your sleep's limited, and then they'll put you through scenarios to make sure that even in that state you're still making sound decisions, essentially. So
it sounds like a mini sort of version of like Hell Week that they have in the Navy SEALs.
Yeah, probably not as as hardcore, but a lot of it's more like you won't have. It's more around your decision making, because that's a big aspect of the police. We're not going out there just trying to kill people. You're trying to actually preserve life, so you have to make sound decisions. And they're just testing you for you could come off a work at night shift and then just doze off for an hour and then get a call out, and the expectation is you're should be making the right decisions after that. And that's what they do through the selection process, is just basically break you down and then chuck you through scenarios to make sure you don't fuck up too badly.
Yeah. Were there any other like memorable jobs or anything that you were involved with? What does like an average week look like for an AOS guy?
Well, it's part-time. So we sort of had our BAU, so our normal jobs, and the AOS was just a part-time gig. So there were guys on squad that were detectives or had climbed the ranks and were in management roles, or there was us that were still working front line. But then when a call out would come in or a job was planned, you'd then go to that. So it was a real variety of people that are on squad. You know, you could someone that you'd be sort of calling sir and senior sergeant, but once they come on to an AOS job, and if they're not running the job and they're just in the stack with you, you know, you feel like, oh well, we're just the same, you know. So it's kind of hard to say what it looks like, because it wasn't full time. You know, everyone's day to day looked a lot different to each other's. Yeah.
And what do you miss about the job? Anything?
I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss it. I miss like every now and then when I see like the deltas, so the dog units, or a cop car with its lights and sirens on going to a job. You kind of get that FOMO. You know, you feel like you're wonder what they're going to and what you're missing out on. But I actually don't miss it as much as I thought I would. It's sort of, since I've come out, you know, kind of realised, kind of did everything that I wanted to. You know, I didn't really want to be a detective, or I didn't want to climb the ranks. I got to see some action, so that my next move was, well, what's best to sort of set the family up, and it was probably leaving and going into kind of like the private sector and corporate world.
Yeah, it's probably quite that'll be a strange answer for a lot of people, that you see sirens and you get FOMO. But to me, I think it's a good answer, because the alternative to that is like you go into like PTSD or panic mode, or get all triggered when that happens. Yeah. And that'd be, being on high alert like that would be no sort of way to live your life. So when did the therapy journey start?
So straight afterwards, I was fine. I did my psychologist appointments, and I think I didn't deal with it properly straight afterwards.
You just sort of ticking the boxes, or?
Yeah, kind of tick the boxes, and because I was still working in that environment, you know, I had to be in that mindset of, you know, I can't really let myself get into that state, because if a job comes up tomorrow, I need to be switched on and ready to perform, essentially. And this was sort of an area I sort of touched on before, not kind of handling it well with Jess. You know, like I'd be like around, openly say, oh yeah, it was the best job of my life, and she's there, you're a fucking idiot. Like you nearly died, and you're here going on about how it was the best job that you've been to, and like just like so blasé about what happened without actually taking into account, like, she nearly lost everything, you know. And here I was. I did nearly lose everything, but it was still, I was doing the job that I like to do, and it was something that I wanted to do, whereas she had a lot more to lose. So yeah, so it was fine at the beginning, and then it wasn't till I left and the beginning of March, and it was it around, yeah, it would have been around March, and Guy Fawkes weekend, where Guy Fawkes started, and I just started noticing that I was starting to get like flashbacks and starting to have dreams about the incident.
Just like about the things that you saw? And
yeah, the things I saw, and it kept kind of coming back every time I was hearing, like, at that time was the fireworks. I could just picture us back at the door staring at it'd just be like a very clear image of us back there standing at the door looking at a black space, getting shot. And at first I was like, oh, like whatever, it will go, and classic, just park it, get on with it. But it kept kind of going on for a couple of weeks, and then I started noticing, like, it wasn't just fireworks. If I heard loud bangs or a car backfire, or looking at construction sites started to trigger. Even seeing, like at this point, our second daughter was born, and sort of seeing my oldest daughter interacting with our little one. So whether they were like there was one occasion where they were Frankie, our little one, was lying on the ground, and I just walked in and happened to see Florence was sitting next to her talking to her, and without even realising, that kind of triggered me, and I just started feeling like this real tight feeling in my chest, and palms were getting sweaty, and that was kind of when it started to sink in that, fuck, I could have like been missing all of this. So just sort of started to talk to Jess and just said, I think I might just go back to the psychologist just to get onto it now. I'd hate for it to boil up till when I'm 50 and then it really all comes out and I can't control it at that point.
That was quite smart, rather than just bottling it up.
Yeah, I was nervous as shit to go, like, I don't know, and I think this is kind of what I said to you when I messaged you, it's embarrassing, and it shouldn't be, but for us as guys to actually open up about our feelings and talk about how we feel, which I've never done before, I'd talk to Jess about things, but if I didn't feel like I really needed to, I'd just be kind of guy that would be like, oh well, she'll be right.
Even with your partner, I think, this is a generalisation, but I think most guys, it's like you don't want to burden your partner with it, or you don't want them to worry or panic. Yeah. So you probably keep some stuff shielded because you think you're doing the right thing by them.
Yeah, but you're not.
No, 100% you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was, and I haven't, this is the first time I've really openly talked about it. I've talked to I eventually opened up about it to my parents, and even my mates didn't really know. It wasn't till we had a bit of a catch up with the guys that were involved in the incident. This was after I'd left the police, and we caught up with them, and I actually said to them, I'm going back to the psychologist. I've just started to notice I'm getting these triggers, and they were super supportive. We were quite thankful that my team leader on the day, he's a really good, nice guy, and another one of our team leaders who sort of runs the squad, right from the get-go, they've been on squad for a while, so you look up to them, and they were right from the get-go super open with, they go to a psychologist and they highly recommend it and kept going on and on about it. So that made me, that without them knowing, that when the triggers started happening, I kept thinking, oh yeah, well, if these guys are going and they're happy to talk to me about it, and I look up to them, like, it's fine to go.
Well, that's that's how I ended up with Janet Redmond on the podcast. Yes. That was the episode you talked about. So she's on the Style Bender movie. And I thought if Israel Adesanya is okay talking about this stuff, then it made me feel more sort of comfortable as well, made it seem more accessible in a way.
Yes, that's tough though.
Yeah.
And I just sort of my main reason why, and this is coming out of like even talking about it is out of my comfort zone, but my main reason for reaching out and ended up changing my mind with when I originally said no to you to coming on was to, if I can sort of encourage one or two of the men and women that are in the police, my advice would be like, it's the shit that they're having to go to and deal with, it's not normal. And I wish now when I was in, I took advantage of the services that they do offer, even if I didn't feel like I needed to. If I was to go back, I would have probably just catch up with a psychologist, even if it was just once every 3 months, just to see if there's anything that sort of needs to be dealt with.
Just to front foot it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've even said, I've picked up, you've said something maybe 2 or 3 times in this chat, which to me isn't normal. Where you talk about that job as being, like the best, sort of the best job you've ever been on. I'm sort of paraphrasing here. And there'll be people listening to this that are probably thinking, how can he say this when this guy killed two of his colleagues? But from your perspective, is it because you know it could have been a lot worse, and you guys stemmed what could have potentially been like another Christchurch?
Yeah, I think.
Well, how do you sort of explain that?
Yeah, it's hard to explain. Like, I think it's because it's what you trained for. Like it was our time to, like, his actions and what he decided to do. We have no control over. Whether we win or not. At the end of the day, he was going to go and do that. So for us, it was, we were given the opportunity to put our training into actual use and to deploy. So it's probably more from that perspective. It was because I remember when we were driving in, I remember being nervous, and it was nerves of, holy shit, it's time to switch on and we need to perform. Like your pre-game nerves, or before you're going to compete in something, you're nervous because you want to execute and perform. And that was the feeling that we had, was this is what we trained for. It's happening, and we now need to step up and perform on the day. It is hard to explain.
Yeah. But I mean, I can understand it. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. And the fact that you guys were there so quickly, like I remember that morning clearly. I was running around that way, and it was alarming. The whole sort of central city was in lockdown.
Yeah,
it's the day of the FIFA World Cup starting.
Yeah, that's right. So the timing wasn't great. But yeah, I don't know. No, and I've got so much respect for the frontline men and women of the police that also ran into that building, because we weren't the only ones in there. Before we got there, it was your frontline staff that ran in there without hesitation to deal with it. Like they're the ones that, to me, they're the real heroes in this, because they only get limited training, whereas we are open to so much more training, and it's expected that we're going to respond to these instances. But for them to not have the same caliber of training that we get, and to still run into that building hearing gunshots as victims, and to put themselves on the line to try and save those people, I don't know, I just constantly take my hat off to them.
So what's your relationship with therapy like now? Is it an ongoing thing, or are you in a good place with that?
So I'm still going.
Yeah.
So I actually go every week, so I have been for the last few months. It's definitely still unpacking it. Like sort of now, kind of, I don't know, on the journey. If my psychologist is listening, should we please I threw that word in there? Because it's not like me to talk about me being on a journey or anything like this.
Did you have to go through many before you find the right one?
I've been with one the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go through anything like traumatic or any sort of like particular triggering event like you did, but I probably needed therapy for a long time before I went to one.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was so nervous about it. You look back and it's dumb, right? It's dumb.
Yeah.
It's like a personal trainer for your head, basically.
Yes.
It's nothing to be scared of. But I was really reluctant and kept on sort of putting it off. It's good. And a lot of people said to me, you may go and the first therapist you see, you may not gel, and you may have to try a couple of others before you settle on one. So it's good that you found one straight away.
Yeah, she's good. So she's out pub cutaways, and thankfully she's done a bit of work with the Defence Force. So when I first went to her, I didn't have to explain what my job was, and she also saw my wife, and she does a lot of work with other wives that are in the military, and so she knew what we did. And from Jess's perspective, what she probably would have been dealing with from the wife's side of it. So it's just easy. And so it's still work in progress. a lot more open to talking about it. I still feel embarrassed at times.
Not talking about it.
Yeah, and I don't know why. I think it's for us. I don't know, for a guy to openly be vulnerable and to put his hand up and say that, oh no, I do need help to sort of unpack something. It's not a very nice feeling.
I'm the same. It's like the podcast I did with Janet Redmond. I didn't even listen to that before like posting it and sharing it, because I just thought if I overanalyze it, I'm just not going to share it.
Yes,
because it shouldn't be, but it feels embarrassing.
Yeah, and I don't know what exactly why you pinpoint. I think it's just because you're not like, I don't know. You're not raised as a man, I'll just get on with it, kind of.
Just feels like if you show vulnerability, you don't have your shit together, which is completely untrue.
Yeah,
it's an absurd way to think.
And I've heard you talk about it in your other podcast before, to actually be vulnerable, it's looked at as a weakness, but it's actually a strength. But it's all very well telling yourself to look at it in that perspective, but to actually believe it is another story. But yeah, so all still work in progress. Like I said, going sort of every week or 2 weeks.
Find it helpful?
Yeah, there's definitely been we've kind of got to the real, what Stacey would refer to, my psychologist, as the real tumour of it all now, and a lot of it is around closed doors, and which makes sense, right? Because obviously the crux of the incident was around the closed door when it all happened. So it's just processing. Every now and then I'm finding that I'll walk past, or in the house, one of our doors will be closed and it'll be dark behind it, and I start looking at the door and looking, well, if the door opens this way, I'm exposed to it. So I start to feel quite panicky and get a bit anxious around it. So that's sort of what we're working through at the moment. But she always says that we're making progress. So just take her word for it.
Yeah. Are you proud of yourself and how far you've come in the past year?
Yeah, I am actually.
Yeah.
I never would have thought I'd be in this position, openly talking about my feelings or sort of how the incident has impacted me psychologically. So I think I've probably sort of just grown up a little bit with it.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's cool. And what about your wife? Is she proud of you? Is she forgiven you?
Yeah, she's forgiven me now. And I've gone afterwards. We've had really good conversations since, and I've apologised to her, and she's been super supportive through this whole thing, and actually came with me. We went back. It would have been a few weeks ago now. Maybe about four weeks ago. We actually went back to the site, me and her, which was
who with?
Just
right.
Jess and I.
Okay.
So this college there was probably a good bit of exposure therapy, and that was sort of, once I started to her, I said that was my goal. I wanted to go back. I had been back, so immediately after the shooting, we probably a couple of weeks after, we actually went back to the site once it was all cleaned up, but at that stage I sort of was so blasé about the impact that it was actually having on me that it was fine. So it was actually quite a big deal since I had started getting my triggers and going back to the psychologist to actually go back. So I was finding that I was purposely avoiding the area. Would go out. My wife's 30th birthday, we went out for lunch in the viaduct, and I remember saying to her beforehand, I'm shit scared, to what if we see Commercial Bay, and the whole time we were there, everyone was having a few drinks, and you start kind of overthinking, people are going to have a few drinks and then they're going to want to, for some reason, walk by Commercial Bay, and I'm what am I going to do? I don't want to I don't want to go back there. And so it was a big step, and I'm proud that that I did go back, and we went and just had a coffee. Me and her, we got a coffee and we sat on a bench directly outside where we ran into the construction site, and we just sat there we set a timer for 20 minutes, just sat there and was vulnerable and talked to each other and talked it through, and it was fucking hard. Yeah, there was a little girl. We were sitting on the bench, and there wasn't much of a gap between the bench and maybe like 1.5 meters to the kind of a wall that went into the entrance, and this little girl around my daughter's age, and I remember saying, Jess, like, oh, that bloody little kid. But she walked and stood directly in front of the entranceway where we were sitting and looking, and she's bawling her eyes out. And all I could picture was Jess is here with Florence, and that's where I died, you know. And so I, broke down and got upset, and I was like, why does that bloody kid have to stand right there? Like,
I was having a good
go
day.
back to your mum. Like, yeah. But just process. And since I've actually been back quite a few times and have had no issues, and yeah.
God, you love you're painting the picture of someone that loves like running towards his fears, rather than sort of cowering or avoiding them. It says a lot about your character. It's actually something that we haven't got into, as well as your physical stuff. Like you're a tough fucker. You do Ironman events, you do 24-hour runs, ultra marathons, that sort of stuff. So you love putting yourself in difficult scenarios, and willingly putting yourself in the pain cave. So I think that speaks a lot about you. Have you were you much of a crier pre this, or were you a very emotional person? No.
Like, so, obviously at like funerals, like when my granddad passed away, you'd get a bit upset, and
the birth of your first daughter.
100%.
Just the standard life events.
But I'd just never talk about like how I was actually feeling about things, sort of. I just wasn't that kind of a guy, and just sort of coming around now and that's why I just really encourage other people that are still in the police to just, it's fine, like the shit they're going to, it's expected that's going to have a toll on you, and there's so many things I wish that I did, was more open to it in the past, but no, I was very much emotionally detached previously.
Well, it's lucky that you went this way, because I suppose it could have been just as easy to, numb yourself with alcohol or drugs, or something less productive is what counselling is, and actually dealing with the root of the problem. Yeah.
I'm not a massive drinker, but it's not to say that you don't go down that path, right? But I've definitely found running has been the only way at the moment to, when I get the panicky feeling in my chest, to get rid of it, is to go for a run. Which last week was actually a bad week. Like, so I had a psychologist appointment, and then usually I'll go for a run afterwards, because I find that that's when it's kind of the most raw, the kind of panic chest feeling that I get is right after and during the session. So I always go for a run afterwards, and that instantly usually gets rid of it. But last week was the first week that it hasn't got rid of it. And I actually panicked and kind of freaked out a little bit, because that was it was the cure. Yeah, it was my way to get rid of the feeling. So I was texting Stacey like, "Oh, can I see you tomorrow?" And it lasted way longer than it usually would have. So that wasn't overly pleasant. But so I ended up going back in the next day, had another session, and that did help. But when you realise that what you use as a tool to kind of help get rid of the feeling for whatever reason doesn't work, you feel like you don't really then have control over it.
I suppose it's another additional layer of like vulnerability. It's
You're like, fuck, now it's hanging around.
And like, what about nightmares and stuff? You near them?
I get the odd dream. But it's just mainly it's mainly flashbacks when I hear gunshots or loud bangs. Like I went out with a few of some mates the other weekend, and we went and played down in Orifero, down South Golf for the weekend, and obviously being May, it's duck shooting season, and we were out in the country. So for the whole round, there was people were duck shooting, and there's all these gunshots going off, and it's the hardest round of golf I've ever played, because every time I hear the bang, it's just a vivid flashback of us standing at the door getting shot.
Do you talk to your mates about it that you're playing golf with, or
No, I didn't. No, I didn't then. Afterwards, I've talked to one of them about it.
Why not? You just didn't want to bring the party down, or?
It was just sort of like, it wasn't anything new at that point, you know. It was like we sort of had a it's just been ongoing for the last few months, that it wasn't as if I maybe would have said something. I don't know. Maybe would have said something if that was like the first time it started happening. But because I was already dealing with it, I was like, this is the normal at the moment. Still won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, that's the main thing. And have you got some friends that you have that sort of relationship with, where you can talk about stuff, or did you not have that relationship and you have it now, or is that still a work on? It's hard, isn't it? Because you can get to the point where you're comfortable with being vulnerable, but then you have to get your friends up to speed as well if they're not on the same page.
I'm quite thankful that one of my, a couple of them I have properly opened up about to now, whereas I wouldn't have before. So a couple of them that I run with, it was real oddly enough, we were out with one of them, he's a good mate, and we were out running, and it was, we'd put the kids to bed and gone for a run, so it was like we're running in the middle of the bush at like 9 p.m. at night, and that was sort of the first time that he said something that kind of made me realise, okay, here's an opportunity for me to talk about what I'm going through with him. So I fully opened up to him, and he was the first person, this was only a few weeks ago, he was the first person that I've really, apart from my family, openly spoken about it. And since then, there's been a couple others that I've spoken to, and sort of said this is the bigger picture of what's going on, and so getting better at it. Yeah.
It's cool, and you often find with your friends it's like a vulnerability exchange, eh? So if you rip the Band-Aid off and start having some real talk rather than just like lighthearted banter,
shit,
it lets them know it's a safe space.
And that's what ended up happening. Like, he also talked about some stuff, and it was wicked. You know, we're out in the bush running up Camp Sladden out Clevedon. No one's around. You're just following your head torch and having a proper conversation. You know, which usually I wouldn't have done in the past. Yeah,
and I'm not sure if this is a discussion you and your wife have had or not, but what do you tell your daughters, or when do you tell them, or?
So Florence, obviously our oldest one is very switched on, so she's nearly 4, she'll be 4 in July, and she's very switched on, and she doesn't know anything. Obviously Frankie wasn't born at the time. I can't even remember, like, when I came home from hospital that night, Florence was at home with my parents, and I can't actually remember what we said to her, but she definitely doesn't know what actually happened.
Too young to process it anyway, eh?
Yeah, and like we were very cautious of when we were talking about it in front of her, like we'd never say shooting or anything like that, we'd just say the incident if I was talking to someone else about it. Well, it was funny enough, we actually, Jess and I talked about it, saying like, would I ever tell them? You know, obviously now this is out there.
Hey girls.
Yeah.
Dad's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do you want to look down the camera? Because I mean, the way YouTube works, this will linger around for a while. So maybe this is something they can see one day. I reckon I've never met these little girls, but I'd say they'd be so proud of you.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah, I hope so.
This.
Yeah.
What'd you like to say to them?
Oh, you put me on the spot now. I'd just like to say that, you know, I'm grateful that I get to be around to see you guys grow up, and hope that you get to see that it's all right to be vulnerable. and to talk about your feelings, and and I think the way that me and their mum are raising them at the moment, we are very much creating that safe space for them to come to us and talk to us about things. So yeah, to the future girls, love you.
Oh, I'm getting emotional hearing this. I'm sure you were a great dad before, but this is like just a new layer of Sam Clarke, right?
Yeah,
this is really cool.
Puts into perspective what's important, right? Yeah.
And what are your goals for the future?
Like work-wise or personal, or
probably personal. I think. Just being the best version of yourself.
Yeah, just sort of keep kind of on this journey. There we go. Dropped it twice.
Is she giving you a discount every time you say it?
Yeah. Well, the police are paying still, so.
that's fantastic.
Yeah. So they cover essentially for the rest of, for Jess and I. If it's in relation to the incident, it's covered for the rest, even though I've left. So really grateful and thankful to have that opportunity. What sort of my sort of just keep continuing on this journey, and sort of got some like fitness events that I want to do, and sort of trying to make sure I'm around for the girls more often, and prioritising like now I can actually prioritise family over work, so making the most of that. And I've actually, since we've started talking now, I'm actually enjoying telling my story, and so it'd be cool to sort of keep going down that avenue as well. Well,
it's a hell of a story and a hell of a thing to go through, and I think a lot of people can learn a lot from what you've been through. And I think we were talking about this before the podcast started. So you're training for a 24-hour race in Rotorua later this year, and everyone gets the same amount of hours in the day, regardless of who you are. So you're doing most of your running training at night.
Yeah, for the most part, I wait till very much trying to fit it around the family. So put the girls to bed, and then we'll go out and run for an hour and a half. Then get up early to go to work. So I got doing the Blue Lake 24-hour challenge in September. So it's essentially down in Rotorua, the Blue Lake. There's a 6K trail that runs around, and it's essentially as many laps of it as possible in 24 hours. So I've got that, and then there's an event in March next year called Northburn 100. Have you heard of that?
100 Ks?
It's 100. It's a miler, so it's 160 Ks down in Cromwell with 10,000 meters of elevation. So it's more than Everest in elevation. So me and a buddy that's our main goal for next year, is to do that. But we'll see if I can keep getting permission from Jess to go train. It's a big commitment, so.
You got a good one there. But she must be on the flip side of that. Like, she must be proud of you coming closer to reaching your potential. Like, this is probably an unexpected layer of Sam Clarke that she didn't know she was getting when she married you.
And she's like, I don't know, everyone says about their wife, like, she's incredible. She truly is. Like, she's always. Before we had kids and I was working shift work in the police, she was like, the minute we have kids, like, I want you to try get a Monday to Friday because it'll be easier. And I'm like, yeah, sweet, yeah. So then we have a kid, and I'm like, I'm going to join the Armed Defender Squad and be on call every second week and get called out in the middle of the night and add all this extra work and keep working shift work. And she, even though that wasn't her ideal, what she thought was going to happen, she was always supportive, and she never would turn around and say, oh no, I don't want you to do it. Like, if I'd set my mind that this was what I wanted to do, because they have it really tough. Like when we're on call, there's been times that it's 5 o'clock at night, you're halfway through cooking dinner. She might have Florence in the bath, and a call out comes in, and you're like, oh like, sorry, but I need to go, and you literally drop everything and go, and she has to pick up all the pieces, and so she truly is incredible and has always been supportive with any career decision that I've made.
Yeah, and I mean, it may not feel like this from the perspective of the police or the AOS guys, but from a partner's perspective, even though it's a slim chance, there's still a chance that every time you leave the house, you may not come back.
Yeah, 100%, and that's for all the guys and girls that are in the police.
Yeah,
and we get to do what we enjoy, and it's our job, but they're the ones that, in general, get left behind at home, and they've got a lot on the line, to lose.
Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't ticked off? That you're going to be in the car after this and go, fuck, I wish we talked about that, or I wish I ticked that off? Anything left unsaid?
No, I think that's for the... I wouldn't mind talking about the work that I'm doing.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about this. So you're a consultant now.
Yeah, so still working, still got a full-time job at the moment, but I've started up a sort of like an emergency management consultancy business. So there's a lot of work, and sort of I talk through my experience in particular around being involved in the shooting and in an active armed offender situation. And so I've essentially created some training packages that get provided now to like your retail facilities and retail stores, because there's a lot that they can do and have a responsibility that they can prepare themselves for worst case. Like we look at Sydney, the Bondi Junction active armed offender, at the Westfield. I know that Westfield has had this particular training through another company, and so they were as prepared as possible. There's a lot that we can do for our retail centres and crowded places in general. So I've sort of started up a consultancy business to try and upskill management of facilities on how to take command and control of the incident, and how to then transition over to police, because there's a lot that they can do and a lot of decisions that they can make that can save lives and prevent more people being injured. So there's that aspect of it, and then part of it also dives into the actual employees on the floor, educating them and giving them awareness on what to expect and what's our natural reaction when something unfolds. So sort of upskilling them, and it's interesting now that I've kind of researched more into it. I look at it now, and a lot of the things that we say people are going to do in situations when they react, when I reflect back on our active armed offender incident in July, there was all of that stuff was there. Like they talk about the natural human responses of fight, flight, freeze, and these days they talk about filming. So people will, because we've got our phones, they just freeze and will film. So we had, when we arrived at the incident, we had probably about 40 school kids not too far away from the construction site that were filming us getting out of the car, let alone there's gunshots clearly being heard in a construction site, and their reaction wasn't to leave the area but to pull out their phone and film. So it's just sort of preparing them around what decisions they can make to essentially save their lives, their customers' lives. And it's funny, we even had, when we were up on level 18 and the rounds were sort of going off, 10 metres behind us was a construction worker filming. So he's right in the midst of it, and his reaction wasn't to run, but to, shit, I better pull out my phone and video this.
It's got to be good for the TikTok followers.
Oh, yeah. But you're like, man, if that was me, I'd be, even if I was down where the school kids were, a little bit away, man, I would be gone. Especially my family was there, So it's just sort of kind of presented a good opportunity to try and give back from my own experience, to try and upskill and train others on how to manage the incident, and sort of pass on my experience to them in that way.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, for any business owners or retail chains that are potentially listening to this that think they could utilise your services, what's the best way to track you down?
So I've just launched our website. So it's responserise.com. We're on Instagram, and yeah, just reach out even if you just want to catch up for a coffee and talk through what if it will work for you guys or if not. But yeah, I really try and talk through my experience with it and actually run through scenarios with them. So we'll put someone walking around their shopping centre and actually see if they can track them on CCTV and if what PAs are they doing, and actually practice a free run through before hopefully fingers crossed it doesn't happen, but unfortunately one day when it does happen. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Sam Clarke, thank you very much for your service.
No, appreciate it.
And thanks for now sharing your unfortunate experiences, which ultimately I think have made you and will continue to make you a better person.
No, thank you. Cheers for giving me the opportunity to openly talk about it, and hopefully it encourages even just one of the guys or girls that are still in the police to go talk to someone, and it's normal and it's fine, and it's a real strength to be able to do it. So, no, appreciate it.
Great place to end it.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you. Cheers.